everybody, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. Okay, so today I'm doing a 2-week reading vlog. So last week I did a reading vlog, but I wasn't satisfied with it, so I've decided that I will do last week's and this week's reading vlog in one. I was going to also upload them separately, but I have a bonus video that I filmed that will come out on Wednesday, so yeah. That's what we're doing. All right, so let's go all the way back to 2 weeks ago and put The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe up on the screen by C.S. Lewis. Now, this is book number 2 in the Chronicles of Narnia series, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. The basic premise of this book is that we follow Peter, Susan, and Edmund and Lucy, 5 children who step through a wardrobe into a magical land called Narnia. Lucy is the first to step through, and she comes upon a faun named Tumnus. Tumnus is a gracious host, but ends his visit crying. He explains to Lucy that he was in cahoots with the queen of the land and was meant to kidnap children, but having met Lucy and liking her, he sends her back home. The second to enter is Edmund, but Edmund has a very different experience when he meets the White Queen. She is kind and generous to him, giving him a blanket to warm up and some Turkish delight. The Queen tells Edmund to bring his brother and sisters with him next time, and Edmund promises to do so. But what he does not know is that the Queen has a deeper, ulterior motive. So to my thoughts on this book, I really enjoyed this read. I read this book a long time ago and have forgotten most of it. I really loved the world building of Narnia and meeting all the creatures in the land. A special shout out to the beavers. I just love the relationship both Mr. and Mrs. Beaver have. Aslan is absolutely an amazing character also. I got a bit teary towards the end. I won't spoil why, but if you know, you know. But that only comes from great storytelling. And all in all, it was a great book and I gave it 5 stars. So I am very much looking forward to continuing on with my Chronicles of Narnia buddy read. If you'd like to join us in that buddy read, link to my Discord is in the description of every video that I do. And yeah, we're reading through the entire Chronicles of Narnia series this year. They're all novellas, so even if you are behind, it is very easy to catch up. Alright, next up, let's put this book up on the screen, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is an adult fantasy book. I finally finished this book. It took me most of the month to achieve, but it's a very long book, so that's fair enough. And I gave this book 5 stars. So there's not really a lot that I can tell you about this book because it is book 2 in the series. All I will say is that we continue to follow certain characters. If I tell you who, then you'll know who died and who didn't. So certain characters as we try to rebuild what was lost at the end of book number 1. That's as much as I can say. Hopefully that's not a spoiler. Okay, book number 2 is a lot more slowly paced, but I've come to appreciate that a whole lot more nowadays than I did the first time I read it. I think that the magic system in this series as a whole is just fantastic. I love Brandon Sanderson as an author. I love following the characters. Special shout out to Breezy. I love my Breeze. It's an unpopular opinion, but I think that he's fantastic. Yeah, a shout out also to Tindwall. I love her. I think she provides some amazing comedic relief. And, also to Sayzed. We got a lot, from Sayzed, during this book, which I really did appreciate as well. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. This is my, I think, 3rd reread of this, so the 4th time reading, and it still holds up to me to this day. I end up giving it 5 stars. So let's move on to the next book that I ended up picking up, and that was a book that was recommended to me by my dear friend Michelle from Cozy Reading with Michelle. We both decided to recommend each other a horror book, and so I read a book that she recommended to me, and she read one that, she will be reading one that I recommended to her. And so the book that I read that she recommended to me was this book, The Getaway by Lamar Giles. This is a tough book to classify, but according to Goodreads, and it's important that you know that according to Goodreads, this book is classified as a YA horror, and because of that, I gave this book 3 stars. I did go on to find out that the publisher, I think it's Scholastic Press, actually do have the genre as dystopian for this book, but Goodreads rates it as a horror, and so I went into this book thinking that it would be an amazing horror, and for a horror, I give it 3 stars, but it's important for you to know that as a dystopian, I probably give it about a 4 or 4.5 stars. So the premise of this book is that we follow Jay and his friends who work at a resort that sounds very much like Disneyland. Jay loves working here and is enjoying life, working and being with his friends. Then one day his friend Connie goes missing and everyone gets worried. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is much more to Karloff Country than meets the eye. Okay, so yeah, this book was marketed, as I said, on Goodreads as a horror, and therefore I am basing my rating of 3 stars on that. There were some horrific scenes, and I did appreciate those. In fact, they make up the majority of the 3-star rating I gave the book. But honestly, the first half of the book I found boring and yet also confusing. I listened to the audiobook, and I think that had something to do with it also, as the narrator didn't seem to show a whole lot of emotion. When things finally did pick up, I'm not a fan of slow-paced books, it did get interesting, and I truly appreciated the twist. However, as a dystopian, not as a horror. For me, it's tough to consider this a horror. I view it more as a dystopian with some horrific elements. And so, yeah, it's just really a tough one for me to rate, as I said. But yeah, the characters were fine, but I didn't really ever feel like I got to know them or have enough time to feel invested in them. Also, this book had a lot of exposition, tell rather than show, which I'm not a fan of. All in all, for a horror, it was fine, and I appreciate that I read it, but at the same time, as a horror, it just wasn't the book for me. I just think this book should have been given a different cover that reflects what it should be marketed as, a dystopian. So yeah, all in all, gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I don't regret reading it. And as I say, as a dystopian, I certainly feel it's a 4 or 4.5, but as a horror, I'm giving it 3 stars. Okay, and then for the rest of my time, I spent that doing a tandem read by reading the first book and what I call book 1A of Zodiac Academy. So let's put Zodiac Academy The Awakening up on the screen. So this is book number 1 in the Zodiac Academy series. We are buddy reading this series, starting this month in April, over on my Discord. So again, link to those in the description. And I raced through the other books that I read in these last 2 weeks in this video because I wanted to spend more time on these next 2 books that I'm going to discuss. So, all right. So it is a tandem read, so I will be talking about them as separate books because for the purpose of giving them a rating, you can't rate them together. But if I were, I'll give you a little spoiler here, if I were to rate the books together as one book, I'll be giving them 5 stars. I thought that they were fantastic. But looking at them separately, which even though I read them in tandem, which in case you don't know what I mean by reading them in tandem, I mean that this book is, so in this world of Zodiac Academy, we have girls and boys that are main characters. In this book, Zodiac Academy, The Awakening, we follow the perspective of the girls, and then in its 1A book, which is As Told by the Boys, as the title suggests, it is the boys' perspective, but it is the same story, it's just we're following 2 sets of different perspectives based on their gender in 2 separate books that you read alongside each other. For example, you would read chapter 1 and 2 of the girls' perspective, then chapter 1 and 2 of the boys' perspective, and then chapter 3 of the girls, and then chapter 3 of the boys, and so on and so forth. Okay. So, The Awakening, aka what I'm calling As Told by the Girls, is really hard to classify. Okay, so according to Goodreads, this is a new adult fantasy, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. So, okay, for me, know if this is the right word to use, but I don't believe in the age rating of new adult. So for me, either a book is going to be a YA or it's going to be an adult book, or a middle grade, of course, as well. So if I come across a new adult, I'll read it and then determine if I think it is more of a YA or an adult book, because new adult just never made sense to me. So for me, I will classify this as an adult fantasy, because there are things that go on in both this book as well as Told by the Boys that would not work in a YA. So yeah, definitely I would market them as adult books. So the basic premise of The Awakening, aka As Told by the Girls, is that we follow two girls who are twins, Tori and Darcy. They have led a very tough life. They were born to these parents who didn't want them, so, kicked them out as babies, and they were taken to a foster home. They were fostered or adopted, one of the two, by some guy who was just an absolute prick to them, basically. And he only kept them around because he was getting paychecks every so often to look after them, and ultimately they end up running away on their 18th birthday because they knew they were going to get kicked out anyway, because their adopted father is not going to get paychecks anymore, so they want to be into the punch. And one day, while one of the girls is out doing something to try and make some money for her and her sister, she comes across this guy who wants to have a discussion with her, but she does not want to have a discussion with him. He ends up following her home and then compelling her to let him inside so that he can have a chat with her and her sister, which she ends up doing. He ends up revealing to her that he has come from a world of magic known as Solaris, and that both of them were born to parents who used to be the king and queen of Solaris, and that they are set to inherit the throne as well as a massive inheritance, financial inheritance. So this actually motivates Tori to want to go and check out Solaris, because they don't have a lot of money and otherwise they are going to struggle to live. So the twins end up going into Solaris directly to Zodiac Academy, whereby the terms and conditions of them becoming, taking over from their parents and becoming the queens of Solaris is that they need to graduate from Zodiac Academy. That's the only thing that stands in their way. So they both decide to go and give it a go. And the book kind of proceeds from there. This very much read to me like an adult, definitely adult version of Harry Potter, in that while they weren't necessarily sorted into houses, houses do exist in this school, and they got to choose which house they wanted to be a part of, and there's magic, that they have magical abilities and things like that. So it just, very much reminded me of kind of like actually a cross between an adult version of Harry Potter and the TV show that I keep forgetting what it's called. Legacies. If you've ever seen Legacies, how Legacies is a show that is also set in a magic school that features vampires, werewolves, and witches. So in this magic school, there are many different types of creatures, not just 3, but that's how it reminds me also of Legacies. So, okay, to my thoughts and feelings. So, while they're there, there's another part of the premise I need to explain to you. They come across these, 4 boys who are in line to become king if the twins don't end up succeeding in graduating at Zodiac Academy. And that is because these boys' parent or parents, depending on the situation, are the current rulers, who were the chancellors, who were underneath the twins' parents. So if anything were to happen to them, they would end up stepping up. So these four boys are looked upon as the heirs of the school. And so the boys are very much against the girls. They want to ensure that the girls will not graduate from the school so that they can claim the throne from their parents. So it's a bit of everything that I actually love when it comes to books, which is, magic school trope, which is my favorite trope of all time, fantasy world with magic systems, which I love, and a royalty trope thrown in there as well for good measure. So all fantastic. The reason that I docked zero point 0.5 stars was because of the magic system. So the magic system revolves around elemental magic. So everyone who goes to Zodiac Academy only gets in if they control one element at least in the world. So the elements being earth, air, fire, and water. So you need to have the magical ability of one of these elements, or otherwise you're just not going to get in. That's a simple fact of the matter. And so all of the boys have the boy heirs at least have one of them, and the girls, and I can tell you this because it comes up early enough, so I don't consider it a spoiler, the girls actually end up having all four elements. So they have earth, air, fire, and water. However, the magic system itself, so I was one of the reasons why I love magic school tropes in fantasies is because we get to see our protagonist or protagonists learning the magic system. So we get to learn along with them. And so in Harry Potter, for example, we get to go to Transfiguration class and Charms class and Defense Against the Dark Arts and things like that. And we get to really see more about the magical side and learn alongside our characters. And we also have that with Nevermore, the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. And in book 1 of Keeper of the Lost Cities, we have that with the Foxfire Academy as well, which I really appreciated. But in this book, while we do attend classes, so I need to make that point. So there are some magic schools that I've experienced as a trope in books where we don't attend classes, we just go to the school and the class is just skipped over. We do actually go to the classes, so I do appreciate that. But the magic system seems to more be along the lines of just think it and it will happen. And that doesn't work for me. And so it is the softest magic system I've ever experienced. And I just don't get it. Like, oh, just you hold the ability of fire. So just think of fire and fire will spring in your hands. It doesn't work for me. I guess I've read too much magic, but too many fantasy books with magic systems. But yeah, but aside from that, I really enjoyed this first book, and I'm really excited to get to book 2 because there is something coming up called a reckoning, and I was hoping it would feature in book 1. It didn't, but book 2, Ruthless Fae, I'm hoping the reckoning actually features in that book. So we'll see how we go, but that's meant to be a very big trial that the students undertake, so I'm intrigued by that. But anyway, I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I'll be reading Ruthless Fae in May, so really looking forward to getting onto that one. But it was a great start for me. I want to thank Amy from my Discord because she is the one that influenced me to want to read it because she kept talking about it, and the way she was talking about it was infectious on me, and I just, couldn't wait to read it. And a lot of people told me that I probably wouldn't like this book because there's a lot of bullying that goes on. I do need to give you a trigger warning there. There is a ton of bullying that goes on in both books, but I was able to handle that. And because I was able to handle that in this book, in The Awakening, I ended up being okay with it and just being able to enjoy the story for what it was. So 4.5 stars. I loved it. I cannot wait to continue on with the series. So now let's turn our attention to book 1A as told by the boys. This is a book that I think was written 2 years after The Awakening, aka As Told by the Girls, was written, but I really, really appreciated that this one was written. In the spirit of full transparency, I got close to DNFing The Awakening within the first 2 chapters, but I'm glad that I kept going because it ended up being an amazing book. But what kept me going with The Awakening was As Told by the Boys. So again, new adult fantasy, And my star rating for this one is 5 stars, but again, for me, as I say, it's an adult fantasy in my mind. But I gave this one 5 stars, and the reason why I gave it 5 stars was because I loved it, literally cover to cover. The book opens up with just the most intense and amazingly dramatic scene. I'm going to read you the first sentence because it's not a spoiler, it's the first sentence, which is, an explosion of wayward fire magic crashed into the wall above my head, and I ducked down as Lance threw up an air shield to protect us. I mean, oh my gosh, I was captivated from that very first line. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Where the awakening to me started off a lot more slowly than this one. Okay. What can I say about this book? This book is going to hold a very special place in my heart because it did something that surprised me. And that is that this book is shocking. It is absolutely shocking. Not shocking in a way of horrible, but shocking in a way of, I feel like for me, this book kind of served the purpose of shocking me to my core. But a book being shocking isn't necessarily a bad thing. And that is certainly my takeaway from As Told by the Boys. It shocked me to my core, but I loved it. So yes, this series is seen as a bullying romance fantasy, and I can see what they mean, especially if you look at both The Awakening and As Told by the Boys. These girls go through quite a lot of heck at Zodiac Academy owing to the heirs who want to do everything they can to keep the girls from claiming the throne. And so that's where the bullying does come in. But in As Told by the Boys, we get to see why. We get to see what has motivated them to be where they are. They are in no way, shape, or form one-dimensional characters. They have the motivations that they have for a reason that I don't really want to go into because I feel like that would be a spoiler. But anyway, yeah, so we follow a number of different characters in this book. We follow, I'm trying to remember them, but we follow Darius, Orion, Seth, Max, no, not Gabriel, but the other one that I can't think of, Caleb. Who are the current heirs, and if I'm missing one, I do apologize. But anyway, I just found it to be very interesting. So, I'm going to give you a warning, and then I'm going to try and be a little more specific with that warning. This book, As Told by the Boys, is incredibly spicy. The Awakening has a spicy scene, just one spicy scene. With As Told by the Boys, it is incredibly spicy. Now, the thing is, it's spicy because every boy, Orion's a man, but anyway, every male in As Told by the Boys refers to their appendage, let's put it that way, so many times that the word for the male genitalia is probably the most commonly used word in this entire book of As Told by the Boys. And I think that's what was shocking me, because I've read a number of romances and contemporaries and things like that. I've even read adult romances and contemporaries, and I've read spicy books too. But the amount of times that word came up in this book, I tell you what, if I had a penny for every time that word came up, I'd be very rich right now. So I say spicy on that level. Are there a lot of sex scenes in this book? No, I think that there's maybe 2 or 3 throughout the course of the entire book. And this book is very long, in fact. This book is 560 odd pages. So it is a tome. But in saying that, so just be mindful that the men are men filled with a lot of testosterone. And so when something happens and they become aroused, they will say that they are. They'll make it very obvious whether they're doing that externally or internally, and you just need to be prepared for that, because I wasn't. But again, as I said, with those shocking, spicy moments that occur in this book, a shocking book isn't necessarily a bad thing. And so with me being able to accept that and deal with it and continue to move on, uh, yeah, allowed me to enjoy the story for what it was, and I ultimately gave it 5 stars. I think what I found most shocking about the fact that they refer to their, you know, appendage so many times throughout the book is that it's a fantasy. If it was a romance, I mean, it is pegged as a bullying romance, these two books, but the technical genre is fantasy, and I've never come across a fantasy that has done that before. So that is what shocked me. But I thought, it's shocking, but not necessarily a bad thing. So I'll just keep reading and I end up enjoying the book. Not for that reason, but I must admit that the shockingness was was helpful for me because I'm so used to reading books that don't shock me in the way that As Told by the Boys did. And that shock was a great thing for me. It was wonderful to kind of just, jump so many times while reading this book, and it had me literally on the edge of my seat for most of the way through. Okay, just some quick side comments on this one because it literally is the same book as The Awakening, but told by the perspective of the boys. I do like the boys. I think I have a soft spot for Darius. He is the first perspective we're introduced to in this book, and I liked him in that first chapter of his, but the more we went along, the more I was questioning, do I like him, don't I like him? And then we find out more about his backstory, and I grew to love him a lot over the course of this book. And I also do like Orion. We get to know a lot about Orion as well. And Darius and Orion, to me, arguably are the main characters of this book, and they interact mostly with the twins out of everyone. But I think I like all of them. I like Seth. I like Max. We didn't get a lot of Max, but I did like him. And who was that other one that I keep forgetting? Caleb. I have to think of Pretty Little Liars to remember his name. Caleb, as well. So it was great getting to know all of those characters, and I don't have anyone that I necessarily don't like. So that was good. If there's one character I don't like, it's a side character who is obsessed with the twins, and I forgot her name, but if you've read the series, you know who I'm referring to. She's a bit much for me, and a bit much for the twins, and a bit much, it seems, for everyone as well, not just me. But anyway, overall, I think that these two books were just absolutely fantastic. The only downside for me was the magic system is softer than any magic system I've ever, ever, ever read. This is the single softest magic system ever. But in saying that, I just thought it was amazing, and I truly enjoyed my journey. It took me a while to get through these books. I think it took me about a week or so to get through this tandem read of both of them. But I remember Amy on my Discord talking about Zodiac Academy and how it would take her a while to get through each book, but that she didn't mind because she loved them so much. And Amy, I have to say, I completely agree with that. I understand where you're coming from. It took me a week to get through, but I wasn't upset that it did because I enjoyed myself so much with them that if it took me 2 weeks, I would have been fine with it also. So really, really, really thrilled that I have begun this series. And as I said, I gave The Awakening 4.5 stars. I gave As Told by the Boys 5 stars. Yeah, The Awakening, there were certain things that let me down. The beginning let me down, and the magic system let me down. But As Told by the Boys, while the magic system may have let me down a little bit, the characters, the character development, and the plot in As Told by the Boys more than made up for it. So, yeah, ultimately, I need to give it the maximum rating because it was fantastic. It was so, so, so good. And if you've read The Awakening before, I highly recommend you read As Told by the Boys because you get a much bigger picture. It comes full circle reading As Told by the Boys alongside The Awakening. If you have not read either and you would like to read them, I do highly recommend reading both. If you feel like you can only read one, I am sure that the authors Caroline Peckham and her sister Susan Valenti would say don't do this, but in my opinion, if you could only read one, read As Told by the Boys rather than reading The Awakening, because to me, it's just so much more gripping. It's not to say The Awakening is bad. It's not. It deserved the 4.5 stars it got from me, but I just found As Told by the Boys to be so much more intriguing. So that would be my recommendation. Now, from what Amy has told me, when moving on from book 1 and book 1A in the series, moving forward, there is no book A for the rest. So there's no 2A, 3A, whatever. So we just go on to book 2, book 3, book 4 as one book. But from what Amy has told me, we do get the boys' perspective in those other books. So I am looking forward to that. I just think this was absolutely fantastic and I can't highly recommend it enough. So there you go. That is my update for the for these last 2 weeks. And now let's look ahead and see what I plan to read for this upcoming week. Alright, so first up, and I'm incredibly excited about this one too. I was incredibly excited for April anyway, but certainly for Zodiac Academy and this one, Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare. This is book 1 in the Eldest Curses duology that is featuring Malik, that is Alec and Magnus as the main characters. You cannot have me more excited than I am to get onto this book, so I can't wait. Then when I finish that one, I'm going to pick up My Only Sunshine by M.J. Fleming. This is an adult thriller that I am told is incredibly thrilling for a thriller, so that has me incredibly excited as well. And then I'm picking up my second series that I'm reading on my SAS list by Amanda Flower, which is her Magical Bookshop mystery series starting book 1, which is Crime and Poetry. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. So that is it. Those are all the books that I read in in these last 2 weeks, and also the 3 books that I plan to read for this coming week. I hope you're having an amazing reading time yourself. Let me know of the books you enjoyed in the past 2 weeks that you read, and the books that you plan to read in this upcoming one. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another, and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading! Bye everyone!